Yeah. The funny part is, I don't know if this is funny, but a lot of it is like people do a lot. There's a lot of planning, and it's like the nature, to the earlier point, these things are so hard and so risky that it's, the hard part isn't that it's building the company that becomes worth that $500 million is the real challenge. Now, there's an interesting
and like you don't have to these are all like super technical. You don't have to oversolve. Typically, like a normal founder, who sets up a Delaware C corp, gets his restricted stock, files the 83B, and starts rolling and going out to get VC funding. Like all of those, that all works, right? It's like you're certainly able to get to the QSB. You don't have to do anything special, right? If you're just starting out and you want to roll out.
Yeah, your job at that point is build a company that creates value, build something valuable, and that's the one thing that matters. Yeah. Now, maybe we talk about the small business and kind of holding requirement, and like what does that entail?
So that's in general what the rule says is you got to get the shares at original issuance before the company has more than $50 million of aggregate gross assets. And that's just an arbitrary ceiling that Congress put in place, which basically means like once the company has raised more than $50 million, it can't issue any more QSBS, right? So like the founders definitely get that. The early employees who exercise, they get it. The Series A investor, the C, the B maybe, right? But once the company has more than 50 million, even in the round that you go over 50 million in raising that capital, the company can't issue any more QSBS after that. Now, all the QSBS that's already been issued retains its QSBS, right? It's just that once the company has gone over that 50 million, it can't issue it. Because that's like where Congress drew an artificial line to say, this is what small means, right? That once you have...
And there's no inflation in this number. The 50 million is a hard number. There's no inflation. Now, and there's also this piece of, there's also this piece of, they want you to invest time, and so that you have to hold these shares for 5 years. Now, there's a couple of interesting nuances here. So one, let's say you're an early employee at the company and you receive the shares. And let's say you've been in company for 5 years, but you only exercise the shares 3 years later. Yep. Are your shares are QSBS eligible? Let's assume they were eligible, but because you exercised them 3 years after you joined, so they've only been exercised for 2 years, would those shares qualify at that 5 year point?
No, you got to exercise the shares and get stock. So the legislative history says options, warrants, and convertible debt can be QSBS, but only on conversion, right? So I have calls with kids, early employees who are like, so I've got all this QSBS, I want to do stacking or whatever. I'm like, okay, so when did you exercise your options and get the shares? They're like, oh, no, it's still all options.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, dude, I'm terribly sorry, but that doesn't work. So that's because, again, think about it like from a policy standpoint. The point is, if you early exercise and get the shares, that's actually risk, right? You're paying for the shares, you're holding shares, right? So this is also relevant for investors, right? Because there's an open question about whether safes, right?
Yeah, this is a great one.
The sort of loan investment tool in Silicon Valley now for early investors to come in is the safe.
Yeah, and just
for simple agreement for future equity that says, well, you're making this investment and this instrument will convert to shares, but the question is, does that safe start the 5 year holding clock or not?
Yeah, and just for context, right, the safe is kind of, it's been around for a while. YC really made this the default standard. And there's a lot of reasons of, it made things simpler for investors and founders, really cut out a lot of legal work that was involved up front, for particularly when you have a lower amount of capital that you don't require. And this is why historically people did price rounds of these, the bills are typically 6 figures or more. And just for an early stage company, that's just a lot.